Hey, what's up, everybody? A Life on Our Planet, My Witness Statement and a Vision for the Future by David Attenborough. Sir David Attenborough is a natural historian and is known as the man behind the BBC nature documentaries. He's more recognizable by his voice than his name. In fact, David Attenborough has one of the most recognizable voices in the world today. If you haven't heard him speak, you're tragically missing out. So we could talk about how amazing Attenborough is, but I want to focus on the book. But before we get into it, I have to say, before you decide to click away, that since I've become a book addict, there's only been one book that I've put into the everybody needs to read this category, and that is Carl Sagan's A Demon Haunted World. David Attenborough's A Life on Our Planet may also be joining that classification. Like A Demon Haunted World, the subject matter of this book is just that important. If you don't agree with that, I urge you even more to read the book or to let me know why you don't agree with what this book has to say. This channel is a place for sharing ideas and learning, so if you have a reason not to love a book like this, it must be important. So please help everyone else understand where you're coming from. And I'll just add that the more respectfully you do it, the more receptive people are going to be to your comments. So with that out of the way, this book is about identifying problems and solving problems. It's about working toward a sustainable future. This book is structured very much like a persuasive speech. You have an introduction, then a large portion of wonderfully written exposition, which culminates in identifying a problem that needs to be addressed, then a presentation of the solutions. The first section, called My Witness Statement, David shares the man-made changes he's seen happening in our world as a man who's nearing 100 years of age. This section is half biography and half nature documentary, of which Attenborough is a master. It's chopped into periods throughout Attenborough's life, with each chapter stating the year, the carbon in the atmosphere in parts per million, and the world population for each time period. We see how over time our unsustainable activities have affected nature, which we depend on for our survival, and an increasingly urgent crisis begins to emerge. We're talking about things like biodiversity loss, carbon emissions, which means climate change, deforestation, and resource management, and how all of these things are connected and affect each other. That's an underlying theme in the book, the interconnectedness of life on Earth and all the different parts that are played by the different creatures in the trophic structure in nature. The next section, What Lies Ahead, paints a startling and grim picture of what could happen if these problems are not addressed. And I'll just tell you, spoiler alert, it amounts in nothing less than the next mass extinction event on Earth. In fact, many of the signs and hallmarks of mass extinction are already being observed today. The rest of the book, A Vision for the Future, is assurance that proper corrective action can solve our problems, as well as outlining how we can go about doing this. This book doesn't really go much into science. It's designed to be as accessible as possible for as wide an audience as possible. It's very easy to read, with a couple of chunks of nice color photos, as well as black and white art and pictures throughout. So it isn't trying to win the reader over with arguments and evidence. The author writes under the assumption that at this point there is absolutely no question as to humanity's role in climate change, and many other factors too, like biodiversity loss. But I mentioned climate change because that's the one that I've heard people question the most. The final takeaway from this book is that the geological periods are marked by the major changes that differentiate the layers in the geological strata from each other. And right now, we're in a transition from the Holocene to the Anthropocene, so called because most of the major changes from the Holocene are brought about by human activity. The Anthropocene will either go down as a time of triumph for humanity, where we averted our own self-destruction, or it won't. Life on Earth will go on with or without us. The planet does not require the presence of an intelligent primate, and it wouldn't be the first time a species went extinct. The planet simply operates on scales unfathomable to us, as evidenced by our difficulty in planning far enough ahead to avert situations like the ones we face today. But with proper coordinated global commitment, we can and must do better. So, besides being important, this book is really well written from a tactical perspective, as well as for its ability to pull the reader in. One particularly memorable part was how he described a trip he went on to make first contact with a New Guinean tribe deep in the forest, and finding footprints outside their camp the next morning and knowing that they were being watched at night. It's like something straight out of a movie, and it was pretty exciting to read about it. The way Attenborough mixes his narrative with a more instructional, persuasive approach made this a very engaging read for me. I'm glad I found this book, and as I said, I think everyone should read this. Whether you're a climate change denier or a hardcore activist, I think this book is worth everybody's time. Consider that a challenge. Attenborough is a wonderful human being, and he shows it in this book, and you owe it to yourself to see what this guy thought was so important he had to write his book at 94 years old at the time. The book came out in 2020, and if you have any opinion on this topic, any comment you make could make a difference for somebody, so I encourage you to share your thoughts. Okay, that's it for this one, guys. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'm just going to say go ahead and get A Life on Our Planet by David Attenborough.